Welcome back. Now we've gotten a lot of things done here with this house structure. We've been able to get a lot of the geometry done, but we're still kind of in a rough sketching type phase if you want to think about it that way. We've already gone in here and we've roughed in the doorways here for the first floor and the second floor. So what I'm going to do in this video is we're going to go ahead and we're going to see how we can use 3ds Max built-in features to create ourselves some placeholders for the doors. What do I mean by placeholders? Well, we're going to create some temporary doors that we're going to place here at all of our doorways to start to give us a final look and feel of our scene here. But let's go ahead and work on the doors. I'm going to start here on the second floor. If we go over here to the command panel, we go to the creation tab. Of course, we have the geometry mode here with the standard primitives. And we talked about in a previous video how we have this whole list of different objects we can create, extended primitives. We've got windows and doors and all of these different things. Well, if we go to the doors category, we have ourselves 3 different types of doors. We have sliding doors, bifolding doors, and pivot doors. Let's go ahead and activate the Create Pivot Door tool. Alright? And just to show you very quickly how this works, I'm just going to come out here to empty space, drag, you click once, you drag, let go of the mouse button, then you just move the mouse button, so you're kind of dragging but you're not holding down the mouse button. Then you click again and you drag upwards like this to give your door height. So it's kind of weird the first time you do it, but do it a couple of times to practice and you get the hang of it. So step 1, click, drag sideways to establish the width of the door. Let go of the mouse button, move the mouse to establish the depth of the door. Click the mouse button and then just move the mouse up to establish the height of the door. So it's basically a 3-step process. Strongly suggest that you practice it a little bit in empty space just to kind of get the hang of it. It's kind of weird at first, the first time you use it, but do it 2 or 3 times in a row and it'll make perfect sense. Okay, so I'm going to use the pivot door tool here to create a door. I'm going to start off with the second floor, and up here in the second story balcony, I'm going to use this doorway here to create my first door. Okay, now to help me create the door up here very easily, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on snaps. Hit S on the keyboard to do that quickly, okay? And make sure you're snapping to vertices. And I'm going to snap my first one to this vertex, second one over here to this vertex, and then the third one to the vertex in the back right there. Click. And then I'm going to drag up. I'm going to turn snaps off so I can drag this as high as I need to. And it's a little bit out of the view, so I'll just left click once to end the creation process there. Then I'll hit the right mouse button to get out of that pivot door creation tool. And there's my door. Now that's basically the rough size of the door. Obviously we're going to come in here, adjust this, change this around, and make it look good. Alright, so hit 2 on the keyboard to quickly go to the Modify tab in the command panel, and we have ourselves some basic parameters. Now right now this pivot door is an object, but it's not an editable poly, so you can't just take the polygons and move them around. But we don't want to do that anyway. What we want to do is use these parameters. As you see here in the command panel, we have lots of parameters that we can use. We have parameters for the height, width, depth. We can also make this double doors. We can flip the swing or flip the hinge. We have many different parameters here to pretty much customize this door tons and tons of ways. Okay, so I have some parameters that I've played around with before and I like. So I'm going to go with these parameters. You don't have to, but this is what I'm going to do. I did some quick research on Google to try to figure out what the average dimensions are for your average interior house door. Okay, and what I found was that one of the measurements for an average standard door is a height of 6 feet 8 inches. So let me get this to about 6 feet 8, very close. I'll just adjust that number there and input 6 feet 8 inches. And for the width, I found that 2 feet 8 inches appears to be one of the standards. And for the depth, what I'm going to use is about a depth of 5. Okay, and now my door's in here, so I got a pretty nice sized door compared to what I started off with. Alright, let me pull this door out here a little bit so I can have a better look at it. Okay. We also have some more parameters here. For example, we can tell the door to not have a frame or to have a frame. I want it to have a frame, obviously, or else it'll look very weird. I'm going to use the standard parameters here for the frame, a width of 2. I'm going to have my depth set at 0 and door offset set at 0. For my leaf parameters down here, and this is pretty neat, you could set up different details for the panels. For example, you could have no panels, which just makes this flat door like this. You could tell it to be glass, which gives you this one glass panel right here in the center. It doesn't look like glass, but you got to use your imagination a little bit. And then you can use beveled. I'm going to use beveled. And these are the default bevel parameters. So bevel angle of 45, you can always change that, as you can see. You have a thickness 1, which if you change that, you can see what happens. You have a thickness 2, which is going to make more adjustments to the door, etc., etc. So I invite you to take a moment to experiment with these different parameters, which allow you to customize the look of your door and make all kinds of different looking doors. I'm just going to leave it alone like this because I'm going to say that I'm happy with the way the door looks right there. The only thing this doesn't do is it doesn't create doorknobs, but that's not a problem. That's something we can do ourselves manually. So for now, the role of this door is to act as a placeholder. I'm going to use this door. I'm going to place it for this doorway, and then I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate that door, and I'm going to continue to clone it and clone it and clone it and use it for all my other single-sized doors like this for the interior of my house. So I don't have to do this again and again and again. I just do it once, and then that's it. Alright, so how do I get this door to be aligned perfectly with the doorway that we created earlier? Well, if I just come in here and I kind of eyeball it and try to place it like this manually, it's never going to be perfect, and it may not look that good, although it does look pretty good right there. But as close as I can try to get it, it's probably going to be best to place this correctly in terms of, you know, distance and math, stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of extra work and get this to be more precise. So to get this to be precise, what I can do is I can use the align tool to align the door to this actual doorway frame, basically, in my geometry. But how can I do that? I'm going to go to the house geometry. I'm going to go to polygon mode, and I'm going to select that polygon right there. I'm going to activate the move tool. I'm going to hold down shift, and then while holding shift, I'm just going to move this out a little bit like this. Okay? And if you remember, we did this before with the back wall of the house when we cloned a part of the mesh, which was a polygon. We're doing the same thing here. Instead of cloning it to an element and making it a part of the house geometry, I'm going to clone it to an object to make a separate object, and I'll hit OK. What that did was it made two different objects. So this one here is one object, and house is another object, even though they look the same because they're both blue. So let me take this new polygon that I created here. I'm going to change its color maybe to a soft green. So now you can really see the difference. It's two different objects. This is one object. This is a totally different object, just like the door is another third object, okay? So I did that because now what I can do is I can take this door and I can use the align tool to align it according to that object there, and it's going to help me to align it perfectly. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to take this door, and I want you to make a note of something. If I activate the move tool, you notice that its pivot point is located on the bottom left down here, okay? It's very important that you make a quick mental note of that at the moment, because in a couple of seconds it's going to make perfect sense. So with the door selected, we'll click on the align tool, then we'll click on this green object here that we want to align to. So this window pops up right here, the align selection window, and if we move it out of the way, we'll notice that our door here disappeared. We can't really see it. And if we try to move in our camera in our viewport here, we can't. It won't allow us until we finish using this tool right here. Okay? So what is it doing? Well, these are the default options. It's trying to align this thing to the X, the Y, and the Z positions. And here's the parameters for the current object, which is the door, and the target object, which is the green piece of wall that I ripped off right there. Okay? It's trying to align these things to the pivot points. Now, remember what I said about the pivot point? The door has its pivot point at the lower left. Because I'm trying to align these things to their centers, that is going to cause a problem. but it's very easy to go around that problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell 3ds Max to use the current object, which is the door, use the center of the door as the pivot point, not the actual pivot point, but the center as the basis for aligning this. And for the target object, I'm going to tell it to not use its pivot point, which is actually not located at the center. It's located at the at world space 000 in the center of the grid, which is down there out of our view. So I'm going to select center, and now you can notice something happened right there. Well, let's go ahead and hit OK to get rid of that window, and now if we rotate here, there's our door. So it aligned it perfectly to the green object, and if I pull the door out like this, you can see when I look at it from the front, the door is perfectly aligned to this little hallway piece. So there's an equal amount of distance between this little strip of wall here and the left side of the door frame, and this little piece of strip of wall over here on the right, and the right side of the door frame, which is very important. So it's precise. Now if I zoom in here a bit, you can see at the bottom of the door it goes through my second floor, which is wrong, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is simply open up the transform type in tool here, and for the door I'm going to place its Z location. You can see it's at a pretty bad location, 11 feet, 11.365 inches. Let's place that at 12 feet exactly, which is the actual elevation of the second story floor. Okay, so now it's placed perfectly. Now the only thing I have to do here is take the door and place it into the wall right there. Okay, now this is okay to eyeball. You can go ahead and just kind of freely move this. Doesn't have to be precise because we're just moving it in the y-axis, just a little bit like that. So maybe I'll put it to about right there, which is pretty good. Okay, but you notice that the green wall object is now conflicting with our door. It's actually penetrating through it. So I'll select the green floor wall object there, and since we don't need it anymore, I'm just going to hit delete on the keyboard to get rid of it. Okay. Now you'll notice that we still have some penetration here. The actual house walls are going through the door right here, which is no good. So what I'm going to do to fix that is actually pretty easy. I'm going to go to polygon mode with the house geometry selected, and I'm going to select that polygon right there. So it's basically these inside wall polygons right there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the scale tool. If you're using the first selection mode here, which is this one, which tells 3ds Max to use the pivot point center, you're going to end up with this problem where the scale gizmo is placed over here on this polygon. And if I try to scale this in the x-axis, you can see that nothing happens. So that's not going to work. So what you want to do is come up here and switch to the second mode, which is to use the selection center. And now the gizmo will be placed in between those two polygons perfectly. And now if I go ahead and scale this in the x-axis, you can see how I can increase or decrease the width of that doorway. See that? Now the doorway doesn't have to be perfect. I'll just come behind it over here and use the blueprint on the floor as sort of guide. So you can see here's the green blueprint. I'll just scale this and eyeball it till it looks like it's pretty close. About there, it's pretty good. Now earlier I did mention when we were working on doorways, I did mention that the doorways were not really that important because no one's ever going to see them. And now with the door placeholder right here, you can see what I'm talking about. Since the door is going to be right there, the door is going to be the main thing that people see. But no one's ever going to see those inside pieces of the doorways. They're hidden from view permanently, so there's no point in wasting time coming in here and trying to get those polygons to be at the exact location, the exact measurements, things like that from the blueprint, because no one's ever going to see it, and it would be a waste of our time to go ahead and try to get that perfect and try to measure that exactly. Okay, so now that I have my door in place, you can see there it's perfectly placed. Let me show you something else. You might be wondering to yourself, wait a minute, why in the world did we create these doorway pieces? Why did we extrude that into the wall? Why couldn't we just leave the wall like this, just a flat 2D wall, and just place the door right there, and we would have been good, right? Well, it wouldn't have worked out, and the reason it wouldn't have worked out is because if there was just a straight wall right there, you would end up having this problem here. If I just quickly move, you don't have to do this, I'm just doing this for illustration purposes. If we never extruded a hole in the wall, this is what we would end up with. Basically, our wall would be penetrating through our door frame here and would cover up the actual door. So all you would see is this empty door frame just sticking through the wall, and you wouldn't be able to see the actual door, which of course would be a serious problem. So let me delete that polygon there that I just created temporarily just to illustrate that. So that's why we needed to make this extrusion here into the house geometry for the doorways. Okay, very important. Alright, so that's pretty easy. Let me take these two edges there, hit Control and Backspace to get rid of them, don't need them. So our door's looking pretty good. Okay, so this video has been running for a pretty good amount of time. What I'm going to do is end it here. In the next video, I'm going to pick up where I left off on this one, and we're going to focus on using this same door that we spent time creating, okay? And we're going to go, not that we spent much time creating it, but we're going to clone this door, duplicate it, and we're going to reuse it. We're going to use it for this doorway right there. We're going to use it for all three doors in this hallway, and then later on we're going to go downstairs and keep using it there just to make our workflow faster and more efficient. Okay, so we'll do that in the next video.